This is Fountain
Every
Street
week I find
Church.
it hard to find the best ones, but somehow, like I said, you'll hear what I'm trying to say even when the words
Here,
are
we strive to free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. Here, there is freedom to doubt and freedom to believe. Here, you can find a house of prayer for all people.
the swallow up Jonah.
Welcome to Fountain Street Church. Join us on the journey.
Is not a diatribe against any religion, but it's against dogma that exists everywhere. It's called Sacred Cows Make Great Hamburgers. Archimedes is credited with saying, "Give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I can move the world." Once the masses begin to balance on the fulcrum, even a fly landing on one side or the other can wield great power. That fly becomes the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. This is the tipping point. There are things to remember about tipping points. Once reached, it doesn't take much. And it tips in a hurry. And the impact will be huge. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book, the bestseller, The Tipping Point, discusses how prevalent tipping points are. They are everywhere. How else does a fashion trend begin? For a fad to take off, for a new song to become a hit, or for a political idea to strike a chord. And an initial disease outbreak in one corner may turn into a worldwide pandemic once enough people catch it to start the cascade, to tip the balance. We have just seen how our financial institutions, together with the auto industry and the housing industry, reached their tipping points as the artificial bubble they built imploded. It is good to remind ourselves that when things begin to tip, it won't take much. It will tip all at once, and the effect will be huge. So what does this have to do with Nepal? Well, to begin with, Nepal is one of the poorest countries on the face of the earth. It has stagnated for centuries at the hands of the upper caste, the power elite, whose vested interests defy all reforms in favor of maintaining the status quo. This, of course, is the stuff of which rebellions and revolutions are made, and Nepal has just emerged from a 10-year civil war, which led to the expulsion of its king and the establishment, once again, of a democratic republic through free and fair elections. Surprisingly, the predominant party, which has led the democratic movement of late, is called the Maoist Party. It has ceased hostilities and opted instead to participate fully in a multi-party democratic government 5 years ago. Who are these Maoists? As Nepal is pre-industrial, like China was 50 years ago, there are few industrial workers. So instead, the masses, or the proletariat, consists of low-grade, low-caste, agrarian peasants, not workers, not industrial workers. Many of these are landless who have finally come to recognize their oppression, and have risen up to fight for their rights. To be clear, the Nepali Maoists have not allied with China. During the 10-year insurgency, they received materiel and aid from Indian communists and revolutionaries, not Chinese. The Nepali Maoists have not nationalized industries, nor taken over the private school system. The Maoists have been working responsibly and faithfully within a multi-party parliamentary framework. When a Maoist was appointed as the finance minister, revenues were now being collected regularly for the first time, winning the admiration of the people. He later became the new prime minister. They appear to be no farther to the left than the socialist parties of Europe. In addition, the Maoist government has maintained open and friendly relations with all nations, including the United States. The U.S. government supports the government of Nepal with financial assistance, and recently the U.S. State Department has lifted travel precautions and is considering redeploying the Peace Corps volunteers there. All this to say that the Maoists in Nepal, through political action and consciousness raising, are pushing the caste system to the tipping point. But the Maoists are not the only factor operating to tip the balance. There is outside pressure. For thousands of years, most Nepalis have been content to call on the gods and the spirits to alleviate their pains and address their problems. But change has not come from on high. Social change, including poverty reduction, women's rights, health care delivery, family planning, and access to clean water, are all being targeted by 40,000 organizations in Nepal, mostly supported by foreign funds. However, few, if any of these organizations, have openly or effectively addressed the injustice and the bigotry inherent in the caste system. You see, caste is the Hindu equivalent of the Protestant ethic. God blesses those who bless themselves with high birth and wealth and power, and he punishes those of low birth with subservience and hard labor. Because of the British conquest of India, the white man, although outside the caste system, is also considered to be of high birth. I, as a white man and a physician's assistant, am venerated as the great white surgeon. While working with the WHO, World Health Organization in Africa, one health worker said to my wife, "White men are gods, and America is heaven." Undeservedly, but deliberately, I return every year to visit and bless each god and each child. This sounds pompous, I know, but what do I mean by blessing? The Tibetan word for blessing is literally empowerment. So, although answer also represents outside pressure, we rarely have to exert it, because we have learned how to work within the system and empower or bless everyone we touch. The prestige of an American doctor visiting a school is a blessing or a valued endorsement of that very school, and helps us maintain good rapport with the principals and the high caste individuals in the community who are sending their children to that school. But even more than that, my personal visits empower the children and their families to work hard. I might say a few pet phrases in Nepali, but imagine the pride of an illiterate father or mother conversing with the great white surgeon while their little boy or little girl is translating for them. Broad smiles, proud smiles break across their faces, and tears well up in their eyes. Mine too. Principals willingly keep tabs of their grades. Call us if a child misses 3 days in a row, hand out Motrin for headaches and menstrual cramps so the child remains in school instead of going to visit the Shankri or a witch doctor. They even offer extra tutorials if needed. To them, successful students mean we will maintain these students and even support more students in the future. So there are the Maoists, there's foreign pressure, and there's also technology that has come into play to tilt the balance. Information today is disseminated instantly, even in Nepal. Newspapers, radios, and TVs still do not reach many areas in the mountains, but within just the past few years, most of our desperately poor student families in Nepal have acquired cell phones. Cell towers every 10 to 20 miles now pepper the mountainside. But how can our families afford it? You see, cell phones are often free in Nepal once you sign up with a carrier. And even more unbelievable, the charges are only for calls placed, not for calls received. We can call them at no cost to them and reimburse them for important calls to us. You can just imagine how this has improved our oversight of the children. Consequently, what is happening in Kathmandu is being passed down the grapevine throughout Nepal within hours by cell phone. If a political party calls for a general strike, all of Nepal can be shut down in 24 hours, and the gross national product of the nation essentially drops to nil. Arab Spring did in fact take a lesson from the people's movement in Nepal. Everyone, of course, suffers as a result of the strikes as commerce and transportation comes to a grinding halt and the schools are shut down. But something else has resulted. Everyone is now aware and involved in the machinations of governance, just as we have seen in Cairo and throughout the Arab world. So change can now happen overnight. Nepal, you see, is at the tipping point. What makes me so sure that the end is nigh on a 5,000-year-old tradition of state-sanctioned enslavement, the caste system? For to take up the anti-caste movement is to fight the fight that no one dares fight. Even Gandhi was largely ineffective to this end. So let me share with you what I know about the caste system from our own historical background. Our history departments are now acknowledging that the West also had a caste system in place for millennia. Caste, it seems, is a natural outgrowth of feudalism, and all civilizations are agriculturally based, thus feudal, exercising rigid caste distinctions. In feudal societies across the world, the high caste are always the warriors and the priests. In the Middle Ages, they were the kings and the vassal lords with knights and knaves on the one hand, and the popes, or the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the representatives on the other. The priests legitimized and sanctified the divine rights of the kings, while the kings provided secular power to ensure the authority of the priests. Together they ruled over the low castes, the farmers, the merchants, and the artisans, who provided the tax basis for the ruling castes. The proof of our own caste system is also evident in our surnames. Low caste commoners bore no last names, but were later identified by their respective professions or place of origin of family lineage, such as Erickson or Jackson. For uncountable generations, the sons of woodworkers became the carpenters, and the cobblers became the shoemakers, and the clothiers the tailors, each apprenticing themselves under their fathers with no other options open to them. My own family, the Canfields, were a peasant family farming the valley around the city of Caen in France for generations under the Normans and other oppressors. Well, how is it that we in the West overcame this caste system? If you want a snapshot of the dissolution of our caste system, recall the movie The King's Speech. You can actually feel the caste differences as it was depicted. Just 80 years ago, a common teacher from Australia instructing the King of England on how to speak properly. What a hoot.